And this week, MG brings us the long-range version of its ZSEV. What I like about this car is they've not tried to make it anything that it isn't. They're not promising a super luxury ride for 2 and 6pence. They're just saying you get this car with a range of 440 kilometres for under 60 grand on the road. It doesn't look too bad. I mean, there's probably bits of it we've seen in other cars. There's a front that's a little reminiscent of just about every other SUV on the road. The grille where there normally would be one is kind of this patterned plastic. I don't really like seeing blank fronts like, say, I don't know, Tesla Model 3. Looks a bit Gumby. Looks like there's something meant to be there. This model has the sunroof, but look how big that is. With the actual opening going from here to about here, that's a very big space for not a very big car. And then the thing is, there looks to be a lot of space in the back seats, but when you fill it full of people as we did the other day, well, it's not quite so big. It does quickly fill full of humans. And around the back there's a badge making much of the MG pilot system, which is just their highway assist thing. Pull up the handle and it pops up. This is actually quite capacious, and that sort of goes down about a hand. So you can have that floor in a couple of different spaces just in case you don't need the extra space. Personally, I quite like it with as much space as possible. The acceleration is not exactly what I'd call brisk. Both models, the long range and the standard range versions, have a mid 8 second 0 to 100. Now they've extended the range on this by doing two things. There's a slightly larger battery, as I said, of about 73, 74 kilowatt hours, and they've wound back the power. Same torque, but the power is 115 kilowatts instead of 130 kilowatts. I'm not too sure you notice the difference, and certainly if there's 0 to 100 times or anything to go by, there's not much in it. There's regenerative braking, of course, and you can set that to any of 3 levels. It's not actually one pedal driving, no. You still have to use a little bit of brake. I'll put this in sport mode. It's got drive modes, which make a little bit of a difference to the performance. I've got it now in sport mode, and it does make that motor spin a little bit more freely. One of the things I like about this part digital dash is that one of the modes shows you how fast the electric mode is spinning, and that's something that I've not actually seen in another EV. I don't doubt it exists, I just haven't used it. It's got blind spot monitor and so forth. And this screen is particularly good. You can see that I've got CarPlay and Android Auto, and you need a USB for that. It does have built-in navigation, etc. I'll show you what the standard one looks like. That's the standard screen. One of the things that I think they could do to improve is when you go into the radio stations, you have to keep going between stations and favourites in order to save your favourites. I don't know why they don't just put little hearts next to the station. You could just select and unselect as you wish. The digital dash, let's talk about that for a minute. It's nice and clear. Big digital speedo. And either side is a slightly old-fashioned digital counter. And the middle bit is just an LCD screen. It looks like maybe 7 inches or thereabouts. This one though is nice and big, though I will say this screen is a little slow to respond. The center console, we've got a couple of USBs down there and a 12 volt outlet, which I've got my Navman dash cam plugged into. Drive mode selector, and the KERS, which I imagine stands for Kinetic Energy Recovery System, which would be the system that puts the energy back into the battery. As I said outside, recharging is from a 50 kilowatt or a max 50 kilowatt public charger, or you can get a charger installed at home. If it takes an hour on a 50 kilowatt charger, and that's to 80%. I can only imagine home charging would be a very slow affair. The drive experience I would describe as neutral. There was a small problem when I picked this up. There's a little car symbol in the center of the dash, and every few meters it was bonging and showing a red glow around it. But when I restarted the car, it wasn't there. So turning it off and turning it back on again certainly solved that problem. The ride it's acceptable. We've got McPherson struts at the front and a torsion beam rear end. The handling it's fairly soft. In corners you do get a little bit of body roll, and you can certainly feel the battery even though it is way down low. Now there's some might argue that Kias and Hyundais and so forth have a higher quality, so to speak. But if that's true, then I wouldn't have thought MG would have a standard 7-year warranty. And they do. Turn on my cruise control. Now the cruise control is a separate stalk. You can see there's 2 stalks down below. One's indicators and lights, and the other one is the cruise control. And until I get used to it, I keep reaching for the wrong one. There is a little bit of wind noise. I don't know what it is with the roof open. I'm not going to find out. The important thing I want you to take away from this week is that I use this for all of the city chores. And I live close to a supermarket. Most of my stuff I do within a few blocks of where I live. So I don't have to actually drive very far. And theoretically, I could probably get by without any kind of car at all. And I also have the motorcycle and an electric bike. But until I came on this trip, which is just to the outskirts of Sydney to do the test, I was still sitting at under 90%. So if I was to do that every week, including a few airport runs and what have you, I would be only charging once every 5 or 6 weeks. Now we're in a school zone, so we're properly in town. And the ride I was talking about before out on the highway is not significantly worse off in town. And I have a feeling that's what this car is going to be used mostly for, is around town stuff. And I want to talk a little bit about the mother company, SAIC. It's a Chinese government-owned company. So this is a Chinese government-owned car maker. And with that comes quite a bit of money. And in fact, MG from its launch 3 or 4 years ago is now number 7 on the Australian top 10. Not only that, SAIC has its own boat that it brought a whole bunch of MGs here on. And that's something that I don't think any other car maker can claim. So to wrap up, how was my week in the MG ZSEV bin? Very good. I've enjoyed myself. It's done what it said on the box. It's not particularly luxurious. And it's not particularly sporty. It's done nothing more than what it said it would do. Nothing more, nothing less. If I could make a few improvements, it would be faster charging. I don't think 50 kilowatts is adequate. It needs to be faster. 75% of the people, for example, who live in the city of Sydney don't have access to a home charger. So they've got to make use with public charging. And whether car makers say it or not, continued public charging can shorten the life of your battery. And that's flat. As MG continues to climb up the top 10 chart, going from nothing to 7 in just a few short years, it's within striking distance of car makers like Kia and Hyundai. And that is an extraordinary thing. That's something I did not expect to see. There's not a lot fancy about the MG ZS EV, but it does deliver what it promises. And I like that. As always, hit like, leave a comment, and just there to subscribe.